Hello, I'm Scott Wipperman, the pastor here at First Presbyterian Church. And no matter who you are or where you are in your journey of faith, know that you're welcome here. We hope you enjoy today's service on this video, and we invite you to come join us for worship anytime that you would like, or join us in any of the other activities of the church. For more information about First Presbyterian Church, please visit our website at fpchelena.com or call us at 442-4775. God bless.
Reading is from Genesis 1 through 2 verse 4. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. And God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. And God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to all their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning of the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser night to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living and moving thing with which the waters teem, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning the fifth day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said,
I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food."
And it was so. God saw that all he made was very good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all of his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating all that he had done. This is the account of the heaven and the earth when they were created. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Well, this is the first of the two creation stories. The second creation story begins right after this. The first story has the 7 days and ends with man being created male and female. The second creation story has periods throughout it. They don't occur in exactly the same order as the days in the first creation story, because man is created before animals, Adam is. And then we have Adam going to sleep and a rib being stolen and Eve showing up. But we are here in the first creation story here today. And there's a rhetorical pattern of creation throughout this story. God commands, and it comes to being. God summons, and it happens exactly as God desires. This is not an accidental creation. This is something that is born according to God's will, according to God's plan. But if we look at these commands, there's an interesting thing about them. Each and every one begins with the word let. Let it be. Let it be that there will be light. Let it be that there'll be atmosphere. Let it be that there'll be oceans and dry lands. Let it be that there will be vegetation. Let it be that there'll be stars in the sky. Let it be that there'll be fish and birds. Let it be that there will be animals and man and humanity. Let it be. This isn't a God forcing creation to come about. This isn't an authoritarian God. This is a God saying, let it be. And creation responds joyfully to this promise and comes into being. Creation comes from God's request, not as a demand, but according to his desire and his will, it gladly comes into being. Now, much attention is focused on the first 23 verses the last 5 verses of this reading, where man is created. But before that, there are 23 verses that deal with the creation of things other than humanity. And this leads us away from an anthropocentric view of the world, because God has a relationship with all these other things that were created before humanity was brought about. God has a relationship with us and with animals and with plants, and God even has a relationship with dirt. Back in 1962, a book was written, Silent Spring. It dealt with the effects of many things that we were doing to our environment by Rachel Carlson. And from it, DDT was banned. But in this book, she talks about soil. We kind of often think of soil as that junk down there that we try to wash off ourselves when we get it on us. But she talked about soil as a living organism, not as an inert object. Because if you look at the soil, it is filled with microbes and very, very tiny insects that do the work of breaking down the organic matter in the soil to release the nutrients for the plants to receive. And there are earthworms that are busy bringing dirt up from the bottom and carrying organic matter down from the top in the soil. And she urged us to be very careful about what it is that we put on top of the soil. Because if those poisons get into the soil and kill these microbes and kill these insects and kill the worms, it kills the soil. And all we have is dirt. But soil is a living thing, and God has a relationship with it just like He has a relationship with all other things that God created. And then, in those 5 verses where he talks about creating humanity, he brings up a few words. Well, first he urges us to be prosperous, right? And to multiply. And this is something we've done a pretty good job of. I think we've met God's will here. If you go back to 10,000 BC, scientists estimate there was about 1 million people on the earth. There was some research that just came out that suggests that humanity is not just 220,000 years old, but maybe even 300,000 and some odd years old, based on some remains found in Africa recently. But in 10,000 BC, there was 1 million of us. And in the time of David, 1000 BC, there was about 50 million of us. And by Christ's time, there was 200 million people on the face of the earth. We hit the billion mark around 1815. There was 1 billion people on earth. We hit 2 billion in 1925. We hit 3 billion in 1962. 4 billion in 1974. 5 billion in 1993, 6 billion in the year 2000, 7 billion in the year 2011. And there's now about 7.4, a little bit over 7.4 billion of us. It took from 10,000 BC with 1 million people about 11,800 years to get to 1 billion. In the last less than 200 years, we've added another 6 billion people to the earth. I think we're doing pretty well on the multiply side. If anything, God might now be telling us to, hey, cool your jets. But God spoke primarily to humans in this creation story. And He throws out a few words like rule, like subdue, like dominion. And out of our insecurity, historically and in present times, we have a tendency to interpret these words poorly. We have a tendency to interpret them as things such as defeat, such as vanquish, such as subjugate, such as crush, such as suppress. But that is not the way God meant those words to be understood. That's not how it is. He said, let it be. Brueggemann says that the human creature attests to the goodness of God by exercising the freedom with and authority over all of the creatures entrusted to its care. But the image of God in the human person is a mandate of power and responsibility. But it's power exercised in the way God exercises power. The image that God created, the image of God created in us, humanity, images the creative use of power which invites, which evokes, and which permits. There is nothing here of a tyrannical God, neither of tyrannical human beings over creation. Dominion here in the Bible also is interesting. It's restricted to animals. We are given dominion over the animals of the earth. We're not given dominion over creation. We're not to do with creation as we please. And even our dominion over animals is to act as a shepherd, as a steward of the animals, to help them be that which God created them to be, to bringing the promise of each creation into fruition, into fulfillment. Domination must be understood in the way of Christ, the Creator, the one who rules through serving all. The servanthood. The role of the human person is to see to it that creation becomes fully the creation that God intended, the creation of God's will. The creature human is seen as one who's entrusted with power and with the authority to rule. Now, this text is revolutionary. We quite often think of the New Testament as the revolutionary part of the Bible, but right here in the beginning, it is extremely revolutionary because it inverts our historical image of God. Not as the one who reigns by fiat, not one who reigns from remoteness, proclaiming things and making them happen, but as the one who governs by a gracious self-giving. It also presents an inverted view of humanity. The man and the women are not chattel and servants of God, but the agents of God, to whom much is given and from whom much is expected. You may remember that Paul said in Philippians 2, speaking of Christ, he says, Christ, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Christ did not grasp for God's image. God does not grasp. And human persons who are in the image of God, they do not grasp. Grasping power cannot create. Grasping power cannot enhance. As we see in Genesis 2 through 3, grasping power brings about death. So we are not to grasp power. We are not to grasp things. We are agents of God. God says, let it be. In Jesus Christ, we're offered a new discernment of who God is and who mankind is called to be. The striking feature of Christ was that he was not interested in his own well-being, but he was focused on the well-being of creation, of those around him, both people and plants and animals, of the world that God had created. So Paul calls us out of our old life, out of our old ways, and to put on a new nature created in the likeness of God, in the image of God. Wipperman goes on to talk about that maybe this perspective, this orientation, reflects a Rubicon for enthronement. Because in the old societies, the ruler was considered the image of God. But in Christianity, we are new creatures, entrusted with the self-giving rule for the sake of others. The ruler is to practice gracious freedom towards others, which lets them be, even as the Creator does towards each of us. That we are to be a ruler that cares about those who are under our rule and that which it is. So let it be. Let creation be the good that God created it to be. Let us be stewards of creation that help every being, human and otherwise, realize its potential given by the Creator. Let us see ourselves as part of creation, not above and aloof from it, just as God is part of creation, is a self-giving part of creation. We are caretakers. We are enablers. We are enhancers. We are agents of God, given much, including authority, and of much, and whom much is expected of, and how we use this authority. We are in creation. We are part of the system. And all the rest of creation is also part of the system. We're all in this together. So let it be that we live creation-friendly practices, not just on one day a year, on Earth Day in April, but let us live creation-friendly practices for our earth life, all the days of our life here on earth. Let us consume less. Let us pollute less. Let us eat locally, practice renewal, and reuse things. Let it be the way that God willed it to be. Let us be that glad act of embracing this permission to be. Let it be. Amen.